Hello and welcome to Superpower Gaming. I'm your host, Kevin Castley, and in today's video, we're taking a look at the Ghemina Raiders from the Twilight Imperium Discordant Stars fan expansion. These guys are interesting. They move as duels, essentially, and we're going to see some of their features here really tie into that theme. They're you might have seen talk that they're basically the faction that has two flagships. So let's talk about them. So here we are. We got the Ghemina Raiders here. We got their faction colors in the background. These guys are blue. So let's take a look at what they start with. So they start with two carriers. They start with one destroyer. They start with three fighters, as well as three infantry. And they do everything as duos. So, of course, they start with two space docks. Now, I don't think any other factions in the game or Discord and Stars start with two space docks. I know when we talked about the Caldari Trade Confederation, one of their highlights was that they actually can build four space docks, but they only start with one. These guys start with two. So let's look at their starting technology allocation. So they start off with Dark Energy Tap. That's one of my favorite techs. You know, it's very cool to go into the like these empty systems. And before Prophecy of Kings, you didn't get anything out of it. Now you can get some crazy stuff in the what do they call it, the the deck there. So we've also got the psychoarchaeology technology as well, so that's very cool. These are, of course, both Prophecy of Kings technologies, so that's an interesting combination to have. One of the big selling points to Discordant Stars was that the factions were going to feature different combos of techs, mostly around the Prophecy of Kings expansion. And you see that here. With a lot of the POK factions, ironically, they just had base game techs, but these guys, they're all new. Their starting planets are Draw, which is a 1-2, and Trick, which is a 2-1. So they're duos and they mirror each other. It nets out to a 3-3. That's decent, right? And then they only have two commodities. But that, I guess that's part of the theme. They move as twos, so they get two commodities. Complexity rating is low. I don't know if I agree with that. I think low to medium is probably a better rating, but we'll see. So, and then their faction colors are blue and black. There's no black lights, so we were just doing blue for these guys. And it's a pretty dark blue, too. Let's take a look at their faction abilities. So they have here the Lady and the Lord. During the setup, place one additional flagship in your reinforcements and the additional Ghemina hero next to your faction sheet. The additional flagship has the abilities and attributes listed on the Lord flagship card. You have two heroes. So we get two heroes, we get two initial space docks, we get two flagships, and then that ties into the rule of two, which is their second faction ability. During a round of combat, in a system that contains exactly two of your non-fighter ships, if those ships have the same unit type, apply +2 to the result of each of those units' combat rolls. As an example, we have a fleet. The fleet is comprised of two cruisers, let's say. Let's say we have cruiser 2s. So we're bringing in some ground combat, and we're bringing in two cruiser 2s. Cruiser 2s are now going to be hitting on +2 because we got two of them. But it's any non-fighter ship. So technically, if we brought in two War Suns, we could be hitting on ones. Now, I don't think it's smart to only have two War Suns without any escorts. I mean, you can have fighters and stuff, but if you're having two War Suns, you're not getting War Suns probably with these guys. But like, let's just say you had it, you're gonna want to have like a destroyer or something in there to destroy fighters, right? So let's look at their faction promissory note. The raid leaders. After you activate a system, choose one non-fighter ship you control. During this action, that unit gains bombardment 5 times 2 and a capacity value of 2. Return this card to the Ghemina player at the end of this action. So what that means is you're giving this away. You're not using this. You're selling this basically. For the other player that receives this, that can be quite powerful because most units don't even have any bombardment. You're getting bombardment 5 times 2. That's pretty good. You could be bombarding with a destroyer. Like, seriously, you could be just bombarding with a destroyer and blow up some ground troops after you destroy a bunch of fighters. That's pretty cool. Additionally, for that action, your destroyer can now carry 2 units. That's pretty crazy. I mean, this can turn a destroyer for that action into more powerful than anything that the Argent Flight has. You do this with a cruiser. You do this, probably not the best idea with a Dreadnought because you're already going to get bombardment, but I mean, that's pretty crazy. Their faction technology. We start with the Warsong implants, which is green tech, and it requires 3 green to begin with now as prerequisites. So we start with 1 green. We start with psychoarchaeology, which is good, but it means we still need to research 2 tech or have a tech skip in order to get up to this. But the Warsong implants, if we attain its reads, after you win a space combat, you may ready 1 planet you control. Now that's not like the most game-breaking thing, but these guys are a combat-focused faction. They're a very niche combat-focused faction. They're raiders. They're not like a huge fleet. They're not like the Demone Flotilla where they bring a bunch of stuff in to try to secure wins. These guys are like, ooh, we're going to send 2 out there to do some damage. We're going to send 2 out here to do some damage. So these guys are a lot more based on basically raider style, which in Twilight Imperium, what does that mean? That means you need more command tokens. So these guys are more favorable to leadership than the Demone Flotilla, for example, which might be more interested in technology. These guys are going to benefit more so from leadership. We also have a faction-specific unit, which is an upgraded version of the carrier. With the Ghemina Raiders, it's no longer a carrier. It's a Combat Transport 1 as the base, which has a cost of 3, a combat of 9, a movement of 2, and a capacity of 4, and no abilities, no prerequisites, because we're starting with it. Combat Transport 2 is where it gets interesting. So it upgrades. It's the same cost, same combat, same movement, but the capacity goes up to 6, and you may reroll one of your unit's combat dice during each round of ground combat on a planet in this system that contains 2 or fewer of your infantry. Now, it does require 2 blue techs, but we also start with Dark Energy Tap, which of course is a blue tech. So we would only need a skip or 1 extra blue tech to get that. And I would say, you know, with these guys, Sling Relay could be advantageous. Gravity Drive can be advantageous. Depending on the situation, I would say the problem with Gravity Drive is that you always, with these guys, want to bring in 2. Gravity Drive is only really kind of useful in specific cases where you've got 1 unit that needs to go out and take an objective or something, or you're doing exploration because you've got Dark Energy Tap. But it's not advantageous for combat, just to clarify there. You're better off with something like Sling Relay to get your ships out. So you may reroll 1 of your unit's combat dice during each round of ground combat on a planet in this system that contains 2 or fewer of your infantry. So not only are you heavily incentivized with these guys to move your space assets out in pairs of two, you're also incentivized to bring in only two infantry. You bring in one, but you're better off to have two. So it's an advantage there, but is it going to counter somebody who brings in five, for example? No. Like this only goes so far. These guys are fast raiders. They're not so much in the vein of building up huge armies and armadas to go and do stuff. That's not their play style. So in that sense, they're more favorable to the early and mid game as opposed to the late game. Flagships. They have two flagships. So that's right. That's plural right there. So let's start with the lady. So it's a cost of 6 to bring out. It hits on 7s and it rolls 2 dice. It has a movement of 2 and it has a capacity of 3. Now, it has sustained damage and it has bombardment 5 times 4, which is big. Like, that's a heavy bomber, basically. So, I mean, it's not hitting as well as a War Sun, but it's doing more rolls even than a War Sun on bombardment. So, that's pretty crazy. Its special ability reads, when a structure you do not control in this system is destroyed, gain 1 trade good. So, you go into a system that's got PDS, for example, or they got a space dock down there. You destroy it, you gain a trade good. That's pretty cool, right? So let's take a look at the complement to this, which is the Lord. It's also cost us 6, same combat rolls, same movement, but the capacity 7. So it's a huge transport. Sustained damage. After a player explores the planet in this system, place 1 infantry from your reinforcements on that planet. Now that's kind of cool. So you can go out and do your dark energy tap stuff and look at that. We're getting some infantry down. Now I don't know how often this is going to come up to actually add value to your strategy, because if you're exploring, I mean, you're probably going to want to get scan link for this to be more effective. You're going to have this in the space area. You're going to, I don't know, let's say do your scan link after activating one of your planets. And then boom, there you go. You've got an extra infantry there from your reinforcements. But you have to have invested a lot to build the Lord in order to get it. I don't see the Lord being that powerful, especially considering that if you go back here, we don't start with Scanlink. So the only way that we're going to be exploring planets is if it's our first time. But that's it's not that great. In order to really start building an army out of this, we're going to want to get Scanlink. But there's a lot of resources that get pulled in here. Like if I had to choose between these two and I'm only going to build 1 flagship, I would go with the Lady. Now, you're probably going to go with both because that's kind of the novelty of the faction, but I just don't really see the selling point to the Lord as much. I mean, the combat's decent, right? But it still costs us 6, so I don't know. Now, the mech. Well, and there's also an argument to be made that if you bring those two in together, double flagships, they're non-fighter ships, so they benefit from the rule of 2. Let's take a look at the mech. The mech is the Jotun. After you win a ground combat on this planet, if this planet contains exactly 1 other mech, explore this planet. It has sustained damage as it causes 6 combat 2. So that's standard, but that's kind of cool. So what it's saying is if you bring 2 mechs in somewhere and you win, you got to explore the planet. I like that. That's cool. I think that's a really good ability. Now, mechs are not cheap, but look, if you're going to go with mechs of these guys, get 2 of them, take some easy planets, get some exploration, maybe you'll get some relics out of it. So let's look at their leader suite now. These guys are kind of cool. They're agents. Well, I guess it's 1 agent, but it's 2 guys. So they got like these purple cloaks. This is the agent Scarvold and Torvar, the Raid Heralds. They unlock at the game's start, of course. The ability for them is when the active player produces one or more hits during a round of combat, you may exhaust the agent to allow that player to produce one additional hit. That's pretty cool. Now you only get to use this once per round, basically. But I mean, getting an extra hit, especially when we're only going to have 2 mechs or 2 infantry, we're not going to have huge armies with these guys. It helps to compensate for that. It's a cheap way to compensate for us not gearing up towards a big army force, right? Let's look at their commander. Again, it's 2 of them. So we got Jarl Vel and Jarl Jotrun. Or maybe that's Jarl Vel and Jarl Trun. Raid leaders. Have 2, your unlock condition is to have 2 flagships on the game board. So I talked about how I didn't think that the Lord was necessarily that valuable. You do want to get your commander out, so you're going to build it. But the text for the commander is, after you win a combat in a system that contains no planets, or on a planet that contains a structure, you may gain 1 trade good. It's not the most powerful thing out there, but it does kind of tie in with the theme of the lady. The lady lets you get a trade good if you destroy a structure in an opponent's system. So, and of course, this one contains no planets, or on a planet that contains a structure. So you could go in to empty space, get a trade good if you win. You go into fortified position, get a trade good. Not a game-breaking commander, though. I don't know necessarily how good that is at the end of the day. Now, the advantage to these guys is that you're going to be building cheaper stuff, so you don't necessarily need that much money. But remember, they only have 2 commodities, so they're not necessarily going to be getting a lot of money in the game. So I guess this kind of works to counteract that a little bit, but I don't know. I understand thematically why they made it 2 commodities. I think this would be a stronger faction if they had 3 or 4 commodities, though. So they don't really benefit from trade as much. So the hero, the first hero, is Corella, the lady. You need to have 3 scored objectives to unlock her. So she is Raise Order, Fear and Ash. The action here is to purge this card, to destroy all units on a non-home planet other than Mechatol Rex that is adjacent to a system that contains one of your flagships. So that's kind of insane. So as an example, you're going into a system that's near Mechatol. Your enemy is occupying it. They have, say, a PDS and they've got 3 infantry there. You can purge your hero here, choose that system, and boom, they lose their PDS and their 3 infantry, and then you can go in there after and take it. That's cool, especially if they've really fortified something. Now, usually, Mechatol Rex is the one that is, the one that people fortify and build up on. I understand why it's excluded from this. Otherwise, that would be too game-breaking. But sometimes, for whatever reason, if it's a legendary planet, for example, or there's a public objective attached to something, people might fortify a specific planet. This counteracts that. This says, oh, all your stuff is gone. It's just a nuke, basically. That's what she is. She's a nuke. That's cool. We have our second hero. This is Cantress, the Lord. Same unlock condition. So we get them both at the same time. Destiny Drive, Alleged Birthright. Action. Purge this card to choose 1 non-home planet other than Mechatol Rex that does not contain another player's units and is adjacent to a system that contains one of your flagships. Gain control of that planet, then ready that planet. So you could use these in sequence, right? because in this case does not contain another player's units. I think these guys would be designed to use in dual sequence. So you do your first action, boom, you destroy everything on the planet. And then your second action, boom, you take it. Here's the problem. Here's the weakness for these guys. If you don't have fleet logistics, there's going to be a whole turn of people doing their stuff. The guy you just nuked, or the gal you just nuked, can just put an infantry back on that planet and mess up your entire sequencing here. So the only way that I can see these guys working as just an unstoppable nuke to completely eliminate a stronghold and to turn it into yours in one action, essentially, is that you, before using these, really want to have fleet logistics. What does fleet logistics do? It allows you to take 2 actions in one turn. What does that mean? It means you can use the lady and then you can use the lord, and nobody else can do anything about it because you're using 2 actions in one turn. Normally, fleet logistics is kind of lame because you want to stall in Twilight Imperium. But for a strategic case of directly negating a huge army and bringing it under your control, neutralizing their position, this is strategically smart. There's a case to be made here that you would go tech-wise to basically avoid the green path, because even though Warsong Implants is kind of cool, it's very costly to get to. The argument to be made here is that we're going to go Dark Energy Tap we start with, we go to Sling Relay, and then we bring out Fleet Logistics. We can get Lightwave after, but doing those 3, or 2 I should say, because we start with the 1, secures us the ability that when we do unlock our hero, or our heroes I should say, it's game over basically for our opponent with respect to their position on a planet that we want. So we can just essentially neutralize the legendary and take a legendary. That's what you're going to be using these for. You're not going after Mechatol because it's excluded. What you're doing is you're going to take a legendary, or you're going to take some planet that has a bunch of attachments, and that's going to allow you to score an objective. This is an extremely combat-focused faction, but it's also light on armada size, which means we need to be really precise, we need to be fast, and we need to be strategic. So my advice to you would be to essentially research those blue techs in the order I mentioned, and then proceed to basically get these guys out. That means you're going to need objectives. So you're just going to have to follow whatever the game is, right? I don't know what your objectives are going to be, but you got to get those out as soon as possible so you can take advantage of that. And that's going to potentially get you some points there. If you got a control objective for, say, legendary planets or planets with attachments, that sort of thing, right? I did want to say as well, the argument for going for Warsong implants, though, is that if you have a green skip available to you, you can go right to hypermetabolism, and that's going to be good because it's going to give you more command tokens. You're not going to have as big fleets as other people, so you're going to spread out. You're going to move as raiders, essentially, which means you need the tokens to do more actions. Going for hyper and delaying what I was talking about earlier and getting the other blue tech after could be smart. And then you might want to incorporate Warsong implants afterwards. But I'd say, I don't know. I think plasma scoring could be more useful to you. I think arguably even AI development algorithm could be more useful to you. I think having that be red would have been more powerful. Having it be green, I don't know. I don't think it fits too well. I don't think I would research it. Let me know, though, if you would, or if you've played with these guys and have researched it. I think their starting world looks really cool, though. You know, it's kind of got that, like, Norwegian kind of theme going on, you know? Like, there's some fjords and stuff. It's got kind of, like, tundra, some ice kind of water and everything going on. So these guys are cool. Like I would put them as like a mid-tier faction. I think the reason why I disagree with the complexity on them being low is that if you're mostly limited to only using two ships at a time, two non-fighter ships at a time, look, that's not really low complexity. There's more strategy involved with these guys to try to win. I haven't played as them yet. I think it'd be challenge to play as them. I see them having a lot of problems. I think their biggest problem is their low commodity value and the fact that everything is geared towards combat, but you're only going to be bringing out two ships at a time. I think they're really hampered in the late game. I think if you let your opponents build up big fleets, you're done. It's game over. Like it's GG. You've got to go out there, raid, be very aggressive, and keep everybody weak, basically. So if everybody's kind of weak, then then your two thing can work, and now you have the advantage because you're rolling extra dice, or you're not rolling extra dice, but you're adding to your dice rolls. But you're going to make a lot of enemies with these guys. Just be aware of that. Like if you like combat and everything, go for them. I would say, I think they're mid. I think the Demone Flotilla is a preferable faction. I think their whole thing, they kind of have a similar effect to the rule of two, where they're like, for every infantry you bring out, you've got to have a complementary ship coming out. But the difference is that benefits having huge armies and huge fleets in sequence. These guys are the opposite, where they're really lean, they're really sparse, and I don't know how well they're going to perform in the grand scheme of things. I don't know how well these guys are going to fare against, say, a Mahawk or a Cabal or the Demone Flotilla or the SAR. Oh, these guys would get destroyed by the SAR if they let the SAR build up. You're going up against everything and you only got two ships. I mean, now you don't have to bring in two. You could negate that. But then one of your two faction abilities has gone to waste then. I think these guys need to be very aggressive early on. And I think if you let things slip into the late game, you know, I think it's probably GG for you. So those are my thoughts here. Be sure to check out my other Twilight Imperium faction reviews. I've got a playlist we're going to have in the card screen there at the end here on this video. And be sure to follow my main channel, of course, Superpower Broadcasting on YouTube. And as well, make sure you're subscribed here. Our DEF CON video, the big one, just came up on 280K views. So if you want to check out some DEF CON content, there's some fire content over there. Going to be doing some more faction reviews, of course, for Twilight Imperium. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you for tuning in. And I'll see you in the next video. So let me know how it goes with the Ghemina Raiders. Take care and stay based.